How did a woman serving drinks at a billionaire's gala end up bringing an entire room of elites to tears with a single piano performance? 30 minutes earlier, they were laughing at her, mocking her, treating her like she was nothing more than part of the furniture. Now, complete silence. Not a single breath, not a single whisper, just the fading echo of a final piano note hanging in the air like a prayer. Every eye in that grand ballroom was fixed on her. Some had tears streaming down their faces. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. And the woman who had orchestrated the cruelty. She stood there, face flushed with humiliation, unable to look away from the very person she had tried to destroy. What happened in those 30 minutes would change everything. Not just for the woman at the piano, but for everyone in that room. But to understand this moment, we need to go back to where it all began. Back to the glittering chandeliers, the champagne flutes, and the cruel laughter of people who thought they were untouchable. This is the story of one night, one woman, and one performance that no one saw coming. The Ashford Foundation Annual Gala was the kind of event that defined high society. Held at the sprawling Ashford estate just outside of Greenwich, Connecticut, it was where old money mingled with new money, where deals worth millions were struck over glasses of Dom Perignon, and where the elite of the elite came to see and be seen. The grand ballroom glittered like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting prismatic light across marble floors, polished to a mirror shine. Tables draped in ivory silk were arranged in perfect symmetry, each one adorned with centerpieces of white orchids and gold-dusted roses that must have cost more than most people's monthly rent. Tuxedos and evening gowns worth tens of thousands of dollars swirled across the dance floor. Diamonds caught the light at every turn. The air was thick with expensive perfume, and the subtle scent of wealth, that intangible aroma of privilege that money can buy but never quite hide. This was a charity gala, ostensibly raising funds for arts education. The irony of that would become apparent soon enough. Among the servers weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres was a woman who moved with quiet efficiency, almost invisible to the guests she served. Her name was Naomi Fletcher, and if anyone in that room had bothered to look closely, they might have noticed the grace in her movements, the quiet dignity in the way she carried herself, despite the exhaustion etched into her features. But no one looked closely. To them, she was just the help. Naomi Fletcher was 45 years old, though the last 5 years had aged her in ways that had nothing to do with time. Her hands, as she balanced another tray of champagne flutes, were elegant despite the calluses and the faint tremor that occasionally ran through her right hand. A tremor she had learned to hide, to compensate for, to live with. Those hands had once been famous. 15 years ago, Naomi Fletcher had been a rising star in the jazz world. A pianist with a unique gift for blending classical training with the raw soul of jazz, she had performed at Carnegie Hall, toured internationally, and earned a Grammy nomination before she turned 30. Critics had called her a force of nature, the voice of a generation, and proof that genius still exists in this world. She had married her manager, David Fletcher, a man who believed in her talent even more than she did. Together, they had built a life around music. He handled the business while she handled the art. They had been partners in every sense of the word, deeply in love, building toward a future that seemed limitless. Then came the accident. 5 years ago, on a rainy Tuesday night in November, their car had been struck by a drunk driver on the Merritt Parkway. David had died instantly. Naomi had survived, but with severe nerve damage to her right hand and a trauma so deep that she couldn't bring herself to touch a piano for months afterward. The medical bills had been crushing. Her insurance covered some of it, but not enough. The lawsuits dragged on. Without David to manage her career, without the ability to perform, her income evaporated. The house they had shared went into foreclosure. The grand piano she had played since childhood, a Steinway that David had saved for years to buy her, was sold to pay debts. Within a year, Naomi Fletcher, the celebrated pianist, had become Naomi Fletcher, the woman trying to survive. She took whatever work she could find. Catering jobs, event staffing, cleaning offices at night, anything that paid the bills for her tiny studio apartment in Bridgeport, anything that kept her from becoming completely destitute. She had not played piano in 5 years. Not once. The pain was too great. Not the physical pain, though her hand ached on cold days, but the emotional devastation of losing everything that had defined her. Her husband, her career, her identity. But muscle memory, she would discover, runs deeper than trauma. And sometimes when you have nothing left to lose, you find a courage you never knew existed. Vivian Ashford stood at the center of the ballroom like a queen surveying her kingdom. And in many ways, this was her kingdom. The wife of Harold Ashford, an oil magnate worth billions, she had spent the last 20 years building her reputation as a patron of the arts, a philanthropist, a woman of culture and refinement. But those who knew her well understood the truth. Vivian collected art and culture the way some people collected stamps. Not out of genuine passion, but out of a desperate need to prove her superiority, to cement her place at the top of a social hierarchy she had clawed her way into. She had been born Vivian Palmer, daughter of a used car salesman in Ohio. But she had erased that past as thoroughly as possible, marrying into wealth, adopting the mannerisms and speech patterns of old money, surrounding herself with the trappings of culture she didn't truly understand. At 52, she was impeccably maintained. Her face lifted and injected to perfection rarely showed genuine emotion. Her wardrobe was designer everything. Her jewelry was always statement pieces that dominated any room she entered. Tonight, she wore a blood-red gown by Valentino and a diamond necklace that had once belonged to a Russian duchess. But beneath all the polish and perfection, Vivian harbored a deep insecurity. A fear that someone would see through the facade, recognize her as an imposter, expose her as the pretender she secretly believed herself to be. And that insecurity manifested as cruelty. Vivian had a gift for identifying people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. She took pleasure in small humiliations, in putting people in their place, in reminding them of the vast distance between her world and theirs. As she surveyed the room, sipping her champagne and accepting compliments on the gala's success, her eyes landed on one of the servers, a black woman in her 40s moving through the crowd with practiced invisibility. Vivian's eyes narrowed. There was something familiar about that woman, something that nagged at the edges of her memory, and then it clicked. Her lips curved into a smile that held no warmth at all. Naomi was refilling champagne glasses at one of the tables near the dance floor when she heard a voice that made her blood run cold. Oh my God. Naomi Fletcher! She looked up to find Vivian Ashford staring at her with an expression of exaggerated surprise. The kind of surprise that was clearly performative, designed to draw attention. And it worked. Several guests at nearby tables turned to look. It is you, isn't it? Vivian continued, her voice carrying across the immediate area. Naomi Fletcher, the pianist. I saw you perform once years ago, at the Fairfield Theater. You were quite good. The emphasis on where was deliberate. Naomi felt her stomach drop. She managed a polite smile. Mrs. Ashford. Yes, that's me. Well, this is unexpected. Vivian's eyes traveled deliberately over Naomi's server uniform, lingering on the name tag, the simple black vest and white shirt. I had no idea you were working for the catering company. How enterprising of you. More guests were watching now. Naomi could feel their eyes on her, could see the recognition dawning on some faces. She wanted to disappear. Times change, Naomi said quietly, trying to move away. But Vivian wasn't finished. She touched Naomi's arm, keeping her in place. Don't be modest. Everyone here should know who you are. Or rather, who you were. She raised her voice, lightly. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a celebrity among us. Naomi Fletcher. She used to be quite the pianist. Toured with symphony orchestras. Played Carnegie Hall, if I remember correctly. The attention of half the room was now focused on them. Naomi felt heat rising in her cheeks, felt the familiar tremor starting in her right hand. That was a long time ago, she managed. Indeed it was. Vivian's smile was sharp. What happened, dear? I remember hearing something about an accident. How tragic. And now here you are serving champagne at my gala. Life really does take us to unexpected places, doesn't it? There were titters of laughter from some of the guests. Not loud, not overt, but definitely there. The kind of laughter that comes from watching someone else's discomfort, the kind of cruel amusement that privilege breeds in those who have never known true loss. How the mighty have fallen. Someone murmured. Vivian heard it and smiled wider. Oh, don't be unkind. I'm sure Naomi is very happy with her new career path. Not everyone can handle the pressure of performing at the highest level. Sometimes it's better to find work that's more manageable. Each word was a carefully placed barb designed to humiliate, to remind Naomi of everything she had lost to grind her dignity into the marble floor. Naomi stood there, tray in hand, feeling the weight of all those eyes on her. She thought of her studio apartment, of the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter, of the fact that she needed this job. She couldn't afford to make a scene, couldn't afford to lose her temper. So she did the only thing she could do. She smiled politely and said, "If you'll excuse me, I need to attend to the other guests." But Vivian wasn't done. Not even close. "Wait," Vivian said, her voice taking on a tone of false generosity. "I have a wonderful idea." She gestured toward the stage at the far end of the ballroom, where a magnificent Steinway grand piano sat like a sleeping giant, polished to perfection, waiting for the scheduled entertainment later in the evening. We have that beautiful piano just sitting there. And here you are, a trained pianist. Why don't you give us a little performance, just a song or two? I'm sure everyone would love to hear you play. Wouldn't that be wonderful? She looked around at the other guests, many of whom were now fully engaged with the spectacle. "Oh, what a lovely idea," one woman said. "Yes, let's hear her play another," chimed in. But there was something in their tones, something in their smiles that suggested they weren't expecting beauty or art. They were expecting failure. They were expecting entertainment of a different kind, the kind that comes from watching someone struggle and fail. Naomi felt ice flooding her veins. "Mrs. Ashford, I appreciate the offer, but I'm working right now. I can't just—" "Nonsense. I'm sure the catering manager won't mind if you take a short break. Consider it part of the evening's entertainment. You used to be an entertainer after all. Surely you haven't forgotten how." The cruel edge in Vivian's voice was barely concealed now. This wasn't about music. This was about power, about putting Naomi in her place, about humiliating her in front of all these people. Naomi looked at the piano. Just looking at it made her chest tighten. She hadn't touched a piano in 5 years. 5 years of avoiding music stores, of changing the radio station when classical pieces came on, of walking past the community center, where she used to give lessons, because seeing the pianos through the window hurt too much. Her right hand was trembling now. Not just the slight tremor she had learned to hide, but shaking noticeably. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said quietly. "Oh, don't be shy," Vivian pressed. "I insist. And really, what's the harm if you can still play wonderful? If you can't—" She shrugged, the gesture dripping with false sympathy. "Well, then at least you tried. No one will judge you too harshly." But that was exactly what they would do, and everyone knew it. Naomi found herself trapped. If she refused, she would look weak, would confirm their assumption that she had lost everything, including her courage. If she accepted, she risked public humiliation on a scale that would haunt her forever. Her hands might not work. Her memory might fail. She might sit at that piano and produce nothing but discord, nothing but proof that Naomi Fletcher, the pianist, was truly dead. But there was something else. Something deeper stirring in her chest. A spark of anger, of defiance. These people thought they knew her story, thought they understood what she had lost, what she had survived. They saw a broken woman in a server's uniform and thought they had the right to mock her, to use her pain as entertainment. They had no idea what it had taken to survive the last 5 years. No idea of the strength required to get up every morning and keep going when everything that mattered had been ripped away. And suddenly, standing there in front of all these privileged, cruel faces, Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in 5 long years. She felt the urge to play. "I'll need a moment," Naomi heard herself say. Vivian's smile widened in triumph. "Of course, take all the time you need." Naomi set down her tray on a nearby table, her hands shaking harder now. She walked toward the stage, and every step felt like walking through water, like moving through a dream where her body wouldn't quite obey her commands. The crowd was watching. All of them. Probably 100 people, maybe more, all dressed in their finery, all waiting to see what would happen when the fallen pianist tried to reclaim a throne she no longer deserved. As she approached the piano, Naomi caught sight of her reflection in its polished surface. She looked small, tired. The uniform she wore was clean but plain, a stark contrast to the evening gowns and tuxedos surrounding her. Her hair, which she had once spent hours styling before performances, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup beyond what was necessary. No jewelry beyond the simple wedding band she still wore, the one reminder of David that she couldn't bring herself to remove. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had lost everything. But then she looked deeper into that reflection, past the uniform and the exhaustion, and she saw something else. She saw the ghost of who she had been. The woman who had commanded stages, who had made audiences weep with her playing, who had poured her soul into music and created something transcendent. Was that woman still in there somewhere? Her mind flashed back to the accident, the screech of tires, the shattering glass, the moment of impact that had torn her world apart. She remembered waking up in the hospital, David already gone, the doctor telling her about the nerve damage, about how lucky she was to have survived. Lucky. That word had haunted her for years. She remembered the physical therapy, the exercises that were supposed to help her hand regain function. The therapist had been optimistic at first. "You'll play again," she had said. "It will take time, but you'll get there." But Naomi had known better. She could feel the difference in her hand, could feel how the fingers didn't quite respond the way they used to, how the precision she had spent decades developing had been stolen from her in a single moment of violence. She remembered trying to play just once, about 6 months after the accident. She had gone to a music store, asked to try one of their pianos. She had sat down and placed her hands on the keys, and for a moment she had felt a surge of hope. Then she had tried to play Chopin, a nocturne she had known by heart since she was 15. Her left hand had been fine, but her right hand had stumbled, had fumbled, had produced notes that were just slightly off timing, that was just slightly wrong. It wasn't terrible. To most people, it would have sounded fine. But to Naomi, who had once played with perfection, who had once commanded every note with absolute precision, it had been devastating. She had stopped after 30 seconds had left the store and had never tried again. That was 5 years ago. Now, standing before this piano, before this crowd that wanted to see her fail, she thought of David. She thought of the last thing he had said to her before they got in the car that night. They had been arguing. A stupid argument about tour schedules, about whether she should take a gig in Europe or stay home for a few weeks. She had been tired, had wanted a break. He had been pushing, always pushing, because he believed in her so much. The last words he had said to her in the car before the drunk driver had crossed the median were these: "Your music is your soul, Naomi. Don't ever let anyone take that from you, not even yourself." She had carried those words for 5 years, like a stone in her chest. And now, looking at this piano, at these people who thought they knew what she was capable of, she made a decision. She wouldn't play for them. She wouldn't play for Vivian Ashford and her cruel games. She would play for David, for herself, for the woman she had been, and the woman she still was, buried under all the loss and pain and survival. She would play to find out if there was anything left. Naomi climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The platform felt strange under her feet, foreign and familiar all at once. How many stages had she walked across in her career? 50, 100. But this one felt different. This one felt like walking to an execution. The piano waited for her. It was a Steinway Model D, the concert grand 9 feet of perfect engineering and craftsmanship. The same model she had owned once, the same model she had played at Carnegie Hall. The sight of it made her throat tight. She could hear the murmurs from the crowd, could feel their anticipation. They were waiting for the show, waiting to see how badly she would fail. Vivian stood near the stage, champagne glass in hand, that triumphant smile still on her face. She had won, or so she thought. She had successfully humiliated Naomi, had reminded her and everyone else in the room of just how far she had fallen. Naomi sat down at the piano bench. The height was perfect, adjusted properly for performance. She placed her hands on the closed fallboard, feeling the smooth wood under her palms. Her right hand was still trembling. She took a breath, then another. Tried to center herself the way she used to before performances. Tried to find that place of calm, that space where nothing existed except her and the music. But she couldn't find it. There was too much noise in her head. Too many memories. Too much pain. She thought of David again. Thought of all the times he had stood backstage before her performances, giving her that smile that said he believed in her completely. Thought of how he had never doubted her, even when she doubted herself. Your music is your soul. She lifted the fallboard, exposing the keys. 88 keys of possibility, of potential triumph or disaster. She placed her hands in position. Left hand on the bass notes, right hand on the treble. The position was automatic, burned into her muscle memory so deeply that even 5 years away couldn't erase it. Someone in the audience coughed. Someone else whispered something. Naomi heard a laugh, quickly stifled. She closed her eyes. She thought of the first time she had played piano. She had been 5 years old at her grandmother's house. The piano had been an old upright out of tune and missing several keys. But when her small hands had touched those keys, when she had pressed down and heard the sound, something had awakened in her. Something profound and fundamental. Music wasn't something she did. It was something she was. And no accident, no tragedy, no amount of loss could change that. Not really. not at the core. She opened her eyes. She knew what she would play. Not Chopin, not the nocturne that had defeated her 5 years ago, not any of the classical pieces she had trained on for years. She would play Gershwin, Rhapsody in Blue. It had been David's favorite. He used to say it was the sound of hope and heartbreak dancing together, the sound of America in all its messy, beautiful complexity. He used to play a recording of it every morning while they made breakfast together, and they would dance in the kitchen, laughing and clumsy and in love. She hadn't listened to it since he died. Couldn't bear to. But now, sitting at this piano, she knew it was the only choice. If she was going to do this, if she was going to open herself up again, if she was going to risk everything in front of these cruel strangers, she would do it for David. She would do it for love. She placed her fingers on the keys, found the opening notes in her mind, and began to play. The opening of Rhapsody in Blue is iconic. That clarinet glissando rising from the depths like a question is one of the most recognizable phrases in American music. But on piano, you have to create that feeling without the clarinet have to imply that slide while working within the fixed pitches of the keyboard. Naomi's first notes were hesitant. Her left hand found the bass line, the rhythmic foundation that would carry the piece. But her right hand, the one with the nerve damage, stumbled slightly on the opening melodic gesture. The notes were there, but they lacked confidence. They sounded exactly like what they were, the playing of someone who hadn't touched a piano in 5 years, someone whose hands had forgotten how to move with certainty. She heard a few titters from the audience, heard someone whisper, "Oh dear." Vivian's smile grew wider. Naomi's cheeks burned, but she kept playing. The piece moved into its first section, the jazzy, syncopated rhythm that gives the rhapsody its unique character. Her left hand managed it well enough, but her right hand continued to falter. Some notes came late. Others were too soft. The rhythm wasn't quite right. It wasn't terrible. It was technically correct, more or less. But it lacked soul. It lacked the fire and passion that had once defined her playing. She could feel herself tensing up, could feel the old performance anxiety creeping in, made worse by the knowledge that she was failing, that everyone was watching her fail, that Vivian had been right to humiliate her because she truly was nothing anymore. Her right hand hit a wrong note, a jarring dissonance that made several people in the audience wince. Someone laughed outright. Naomi wanted to stop, wanted to stand up and run from the stage, run from the ballroom, run from this entire nightmare. Her hands were shaking worse now. Her breath was coming fast and shallow. She had made a terrible mistake. She should never have agreed to this, should never have touched this piano. But then something happened. In her mind, she heard David's voice. Not a memory exactly, but the essence of him, the spirit of all the times he had talked her through, her pre-performance nerves, all the times he had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. Stop thinking, he would say. Stop trying to play perfectly. Just feel it. Let the music play you. And she realized what she was doing wrong. She was trying to play the way she used to play, trying to recreate the technical perfection she had once possessed, trying to be the pianist she was before the accident. But that pianist was gone. That version of Naomi Fletcher had died in the car with David. The woman sitting at this piano now was different. She had been broken and rebuilt. She had survived things that would have destroyed most people. She had lost everything and kept going anyway. She didn't need to play like she used to. She needed to play like she was now. She needed to play with all the pain and loss and survival that defined her. She needed to stop trying to hide her imperfections and instead embrace them, use them, let them become part of the music. So she did. Naomi stopped trying to fight her damaged hand. Instead, she worked with it. The slight hesitation in her right hand's movement, she turned it into rubato, into expressive timing that added emotional weight to the phrases. The occasional tremor, she let it create vibrato, a slight wavering in the sustained notes that sounded almost intentional, almost like a voice shaking with emotion. The technical imperfections that she had feared would destroy her playing became instead the very thing that gave her playing its power. Because Rhapsody in Blue isn't about perfection. It's about emotion. It's about the messy, complicated, beautiful chaos of life. It's about hope and heartbreak existing in the same breath. And Naomi had lived that. She was living it right now. Her playing began to change. The notes started to flow more naturally. Her hands began to remember not just the technical patterns, but the feeling of the music. The reason she had fallen in love with this piece in the first place. She let herself sink into the familiar progressions, the way Gershwin blended classical structure with jazz harmonies, the way the piece swung between tenderness and power, between introspection and exuberance. Her fingers found the bluesy passages, the ones that bent and twisted like a saxophone solo. Her left hand dug into the bass, creating a rhythmic foundation that made people want to move, made them feel the music in their bodies. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, the quality of the playing changed. The hesitant, uncertain notes of the beginning gave way to something stronger, more confident, more real. Naomi's eyes were closed now. She wasn't seeing the ballroom anymore, wasn't seeing the people watching her. She was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere in her memory, somewhere in her soul. She was in the kitchen with David dancing to this music, while the morning sun streamed through the windows. She was at her first recital, 7 years old, and terrified, finding courage in the keys. She was at Carnegie Hall, feeling the weight of the moment the impossible dream realized. She was in the hospital after the accident, alone and broken, wondering if she would ever feel whole again. She was everywhere she had ever been, everyone she had ever been, all at once. And it all poured into the music. The audience, which had been whispering and laughing just minutes before, began to quiet. A few people stopped talking mid-sentence, caught by something in the music, something they hadn't expected. Vivian's smile faltered slightly. She had been prepared for failure, had been relishing the spectacle of watching Naomi struggle and give up. But this wasn't failure. This was something else. Naomi's hands moved across the keys with increasing confidence. The piece was building now, moving through its various themes and variations. The lush, romantic passages that Gershwin was famous for. The explosive, jazzy sections that felt like pure joy translated into sound. Her right hand was still imperfect, still occasionally trembled, still didn't have the exact precision it once had. But it didn't matter anymore. Because she wasn't trying to be perfect. She was trying to be true. And truth, it turns out, is far more powerful than perfection. Something shifted in the ballroom. The quality of the silence changed. It was no longer the silence of people waiting for a spectacle, waiting to see someone fail. It was the silence of people genuinely listening, genuinely moved. Naomi felt it even with her eyes closed, felt the energy in the room change, felt the attention of the audience shift from mockery to engagement. She was no longer in the ballroom at all. She was in the music. She had become the music. Every note she played was a piece of her soul, a fragment of her story. The slow passages were her grief, the times she had laid in bed unable to move, unable to see a future. The fast passages were her survival, The mornings she had forced herself up, forced herself to keep going. The dissonances were her anger at the unfairness of it all. The resolutions were the tiny moments of peace she had found along the way. And woven through it all was love. Love for David, for music, for life itself, despite everything that life had taken from her. Her hands were no longer shaking with fear. They were steady with purpose. Every key press was intentional, laden with meaning. She wasn't just playing notes, she was telling her story. She was bearing witness to her own survival. The piece moved into its middle section, the part where Gershwin's genius really shines. The way he takes the brash, jazzy opening theme and transforms it into something tender and aching. The way he shows that the same melody can mean completely different things depending on how you play it. Naomi played these passages with a depth of feeling she had never accessed before. Because before the accident, before David's death, before the loss of everything, she had been a talented pianist. Technically proficient, emotionally expressive, but she hadn't known true pain yet. Hadn't known the kind of loss that reshapes your entire understanding of what it means to be human. Now she knew. And that knowledge poured out of her fingers like water from a broken dam. She played the love theme with such tenderness that several people in the audience felt tears spring to their eyes without understanding why. She played the turbulent sections with such raw power that others felt their hearts race, felt adrenaline spike, as if they were living through some great drama themselves. Because they were. They were living through Naomi's drama. They were experiencing her loss, her grief, her survival, all translated into Gershwin's timeless music. And they couldn't look away. Vivian Ashford stood frozen near the stage, her champagne glass forgotten in her hand. The triumphant smile had completely vanished from her face. She was staring at Naomi with an expression that mixed shock, confusion, and something that might have been fear, because she had expected to humiliate this woman, had expected to prove her superiority, to put Naomi in her place, to remind everyone of the vast gulf between them. But instead she was watching something she couldn't understand. She was watching someone with no power, no wealth, no status, command a room full of elites with nothing but emotion and honesty and art. She was watching someone who had nothing prove that they had everything that mattered. And for someone like Vivian, whose entire identity was built on material success and social status, it was terrifying. The music built and built. Naomi's whole body was engaged now. She swayed with the rhythm. Her shoulders lifted and dropped with the phrasing. She was no longer sitting at a piano. She was dancing, flying, transcending the limitations of her body and her circumstances. People in the audience were openly weeping now. Not just one or two, but dozens. Some didn't even understand why they were crying. They just knew that something profound was happening, something that was touching a place in them they had forgotten existed. In a room full of people who had everything money could buy, they were being reminded that the most important things in life can't be bought at all. And the music kept building, kept intensifying, climbing toward the climax that Naomi knew was coming, the moment when everything would explode into the final triumphant statement. The climax of Rhapsody in Blue is explosive. It's everything that came before, distilled and amplified. It's joy and sorrow and hope and despair all at once. It's the sound of life itself, messy and beautiful and overwhelming. Naomi felt it building in her chest like a storm. Her hands flew across the keys now, with a strength she didn't know she still possessed. The nerve damage didn't matter anymore. The 5 years away didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this moment, this music, this expression of everything she had been through and everything she had survived. She played with power that made the Steinway ring. The bass notes thundered. The treble notes sang. Her hands moved so fast they were almost a blur, but every note was exactly where it needed to be, exactly when it needed to be there. Not because of technical precision, because of truth. She was playing better than she had ever played in her life. Not more accurately, not more cleanly, but with more soul, more depth, more raw emotional power than she had ever been capable of before the accident. Because before she had been trying to prove something, trying to be the best to earn recognition, to achieve success. Now she wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. She was simply expressing, simply being, simply alive. And that made all the difference. The music soared. It filled the ballroom, filled every corner, every space between the crystals in the chandeliers and the cracks in people's carefully constructed emotional armor. It was inescapable. It was overwhelming. Naomi played the cascading runs that Gershwin wrote passages that sound like fireworks exploding like champagne bubbles, rising like laughter, and tears happening simultaneously. Her hands moved with absolute confidence, now dancing across the keys like they had never forgotten, like they had just been waiting for permission to remember. She played the big bluesy chords, digging into them, making them growl and sing. She played the delicate introspective moments between the explosions, creating space for breath, for reflection, for the audience to process what they were experiencing. And then came the final statement of the main theme. This was it. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Naomi played it with every ounce of strength she had. Not just physical strength, but emotional strength, spiritual strength. The strength of a woman who had been broken and had chosen to keep living anyway. The strength of a survivor. The notes rang out like a declaration, like a defiant shout into the void, like a woman reclaiming her voice after years of silence. She played the final ascending passage, the one that climbs higher and higher, that reaches for something transcendent, something beyond the pain and loss and struggle of earthly existence. And then the final chords. Massive, overwhelming, definitive. She struck them with both hands, pouring everything she had left into those last notes. The piano responded like it was singing, like it was celebrating, like it understood what this moment meant. The sound filled the ballroom, reverberated off the walls, climbed into the vaulted ceiling, and hung there like a benediction. And then slowly, it faded. Naomi's hands remained on the keys for a moment. Her head bowed, her breathing heavy. She had given everything, poured out her entire soul. There was nothing left to hide, nothing left to protect. She was completely exposed, completely vulnerable, completely free. And in the ballroom, there was absolute silence. The silence lasted forever. Or maybe it lasted only seconds. Time had stopped making sense. Naomi slowly lifted her hands from the keys. They were shaking again, but not from fear or nerve damage, from exhaustion, from release, from the simple fact that she had just given the performance of her life. She opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. Every single person in the ballroom was staring at her. Some had their hands over their mouths. Some had tears streaming down their faces. Some looked shell-shocked, like they had just witnessed something they couldn't quite process. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Naomi's heart was pounding. She suddenly felt the weight of what she had just done. She had exposed herself completely in front of all these people, had shown them every wound, every scar, every secret pain. She had played for David. but they had all heard it. And then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. It was slow at first, deliberate. One person applauding the sound sharp and clear in the silence. Then another person joined. Then another. And then, like a wave breaking, the entire room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It wasn't the kind of measured, society-approved response that these people usually gave to performances at charity galas. It was something else entirely. It was thunder. People leaped to their feet. The applause became deafening, mixed with shouts and cheers. Some people were still crying, applauding through their tears. Others were shaking their heads in amazement, unable to believe what they had just experienced. "Bravo," someone shouted. "Incredible," shouted another. The standing ovation continued and continued. It didn't stop. The applause rolled on like ocean waves crashing against the stage where Naomi sat, frozen, unable to process what was happening. These were the same people who had been laughing at her 20 minutes ago. The same people who had looked at her with pity and contempt. The same people who had treated her like she was nothing. And now they were on their feet, giving her an ovation that went on and on and on. Naomi slowly stood from the piano bench. Her legs felt weak. She felt dizzy, disoriented, like she was waking up from a dream. She looked out at the crowd, at all those faces that had been so cruel, and saw something different now. She saw recognition. Respect. Some of them were looking at her like they were seeing her for the first time. Like they had been blind before and could suddenly see. And standing near the stage, looking small and diminished and thoroughly humiliated, was Vivian Ashford. Vivian's face was flushed a deep red. Her carefully maintained composure had shattered. She looked like a woman watching her own execution. The applause continued around her, but she wasn't joining in. She stood frozen, her champagne glass still in her hand, looking at Naomi with an expression that mixed shock, anger, and something that looked almost like fear. Because she understood what had just happened. She had tried to humiliate Naomi, had tried to prove her superiority, had tried to put this woman in her place. And instead, she had given Naomi a stage, had given her an opportunity, had inadvertently created a moment that would be talked about for years to come. She had, in trying to destroy Naomi, elevated her instead. Several guests were now looking at Vivian with expressions of disapproval, whispering to each other. The mood was shifting, and not in her favor. "Can you believe she tried to humiliate that woman?" someone muttered. "And to think she claims to be a patron of the arts," another said. "That was cruel. Thank God it backfired. Did you hear that playing? That was extraordinary." Vivian heard these whispers, felt the tide turning against her, and slowly, mechanically, like a puppet being controlled by invisible strings, she raised her hands and began to clap. It was forced. It was insincere. But she had no choice. To not applaud would be to confirm what everyone was already thinking, that she was petty, cruel, and had just made a terrible mistake. So she applauded, her face burning with humiliation, watching as Naomi Fletcher, the woman she had tried to destroy, received the kind of ovation that Vivian, for all her wealth and status and patronage of the arts, would never receive. Because you can buy a lot of things with money. You can buy grand ballrooms and designer gowns and diamond necklaces and even people's attention. But you can't buy genuine talent. You can't buy authentic emotion. You can't buy the kind of moment that Naomi had just created. That has to be earned through pain, through loss, through the courage to keep going when everything says you should give up. And as Vivian stood there applauding, feeling smaller, with every passing second she understood something that she had never fully grasped before. All her wealth, all her status, All her carefully curated image meant nothing compared to what she had just witnessed. Real art, real emotion, real humanity. Things she had spent her entire life pretending to value, but had never truly understood. The applause finally began to fade. Not because people wanted to stop, but because they were exhausted. You can only sustain that level of enthusiasm for so long. As the sound died down, a man began making his way through the crowd toward the stage. The man was in his mid-50s, dressed in a well-tailored tuxedo, with an air of quiet confidence that suggested he was comfortable in rooms like this, but not defined by them. He had been standing near the back of the ballroom during Naomi's performance, and he had been one of the first to start applauding. He approached the stage as Naomi descended the steps, her legs still unsteady, her entire body feeling like it might collapse at any moment. "Ms. Fletcher," he said, extending his hand. "My name is Jackson Reed. I'm a music producer and talent scout for Columbia Records." Naomi shook his hand automatically, still in a daze. Thank you. No, thank you." Jackson's eyes were intense, focused. "I've been in this business for 30 years. I've heard thousands of performances. What you just did..." He shook his head. "That was something I'll remember for the rest of my life." Other people were gathering around now, wanting to talk to Naomi, wanting to congratulate her, but Jackson held up a hand, claiming her attention. "I know you've been away from performing," he said. "I know you've been through hell. I can hear it in your playing. But Ms. Fletcher, the world needs to hear you. Not the you from before. The you from now. The you who just played that piece like you were exorcising demons and celebrating life at the same time." Naomi felt tears welling up in her eyes. I haven't performed in 5 years. I wasn't even sure I could still play. I know. I can tell. And that's exactly what made it so powerful." Jackson reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "I want to offer you a recording contract. I want to produce an album of you playing whatever you want to play. Classical jazz, standards, originals. I don't care. I just want to capture what you just did and share it with people who need to hear it." "I don't know if I can do that again," Naomi whispered. "You don't have to do it exactly like that again. You just have to be honest. You just have to play the truth. That's all you did tonight, and it was more than enough." He pressed the card into her hand. "Call me. This week. Please. Don't let this moment pass. Don't let fear or doubt or whatever stopped you before stop you now. The world needs your music." Naomi looked down at the card, her vision blurry with tears. Her mind was reeling. A recording contract. A comeback. The possibility of a future that looked nothing like the hell of the past 5 years. She looked up past Jackson and saw Vivian Ashford still standing nearby, watching this entire exchange. Watching as the woman she had tried to humiliate received an offer that Vivian, for all her wealth and connections, could never have orchestrated. Their eyes met for a moment. Naomi felt nothing. No anger, no desire for revenge, no need to gloat or rub salt in the wound. Just pity. Pity for a woman who had so much and understood so little. Who had power but no genuine connection? Who could throw grand galas but couldn't create a single moment of real beauty or meaning? Naomi looked back at Jackson and nodded. "I'll call you." He smiled, relief and excitement crossing his face. "Good. We'll do something incredible together. I promise you that." More people were crowding around now. Other guests, musicians, even some of the catering staff who had watched the performance from the sides of the room. Everyone wanted to talk to her, to congratulate her, to tell her how much the performance had moved them. Naomi found herself at the center of a crowd, the opposite of invisible now. Seen, recognized, valued. Not for who she used to be, for who she was now. An hour later, after dozens of conversations and exchanges of contact information, after turning down 3 more offers from various industry people, after receiving more praise than she had heard in the last 5 years combined, Naomi finally extracted herself from the crowd. She retrieved her server's vest from where she had left it, folded it carefully, and handed it to the catering manager with a simple, "I won't be coming back." The manager, who had watched the entire performance, just nodded. "Good. You shouldn't be serving champagne. You should be drinking it." Naomi smiled a real smile, the first genuine smile in longer than she could remember. She walked through the ballroom one last time toward the exit. The party was continuing, but it felt different now. The energy had shifted. People were more animated, more emotional, more real than they had been at the beginning of the evening. Sometimes it only takes one moment of genuine humanity to remind people that they're human too. As she passed near the stage, she saw the Steinway grand piano, still there, still magnificent. She paused for a moment, looking at it. 5 years ago, she had thought her relationship with music was over, had thought that pianos would forever be monuments to everything she had lost. But now, looking at this instrument that had carried her truth, that had amplified her pain, and turned it into something beautiful, she felt something different. Gratitude. Hope. Possibility. She continued toward the exit and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The Ashford Estate grounds stretched out before her, lit by antique lampposts and moonlight. She took a deep breath. The first truly free breath she had taken in 5 years. She was unemployed now, still poor, still living in a tiny apartment, still dealing with nerve damage that would never fully heal. But she was also something else. She was a musician again, an artist, a woman who had survived the unsurvivable and found a way back to herself. She pulled out her phone and looked at Jackson Reed's business card one more time. Then she typed his number into her contacts under the name New Beginning. She would call him tomorrow. Tonight she just wanted to walk and breathe and feel the impossible weight of the last 5 years finally lifting from her shoulders. Behind her in the ballroom, Vivian Ashford stood alone near the bar, nursing a drink, watching as her guests talked animatedly about Naomi's performance, their faces alight with genuine emotion. Talking about anything except the supposed reason for the gala, barely noticing the hostess who had tried so hard to be the center of attention. Vivian would recover, of course. She always did. Would find a way to spin this to save face, to maintain her position in society. But she would never forget this night. Would never forget the woman she had tried to humiliate. Would never forget the lesson she had learned too late. That cruelty has a cost, and sometimes that cost is witnessing someone else's triumph. 3 months later, Naomi Fletcher stood backstage at the Blue Note Jazz Club in New York City, waiting to go on for her comeback performance. The club was sold out, had been sold out within hours of tickets going on sale. Word had spread about what happened at the Ashford Gala. Someone had recorded part of her performance on their phone, and though the audio quality was poor, it had been shared thousands of times on social media. People were calling it the performance of the year. Jackson Reed had been true to his word. They had recorded an album over the past 3 months. A mix of jazz standards, classical pieces, and 2 originals that Naomi had composed during her years away from music. Compositions born from pain and loss and survival. The album was called After the Fall, and it was scheduled for release next month. Early reviews from the few critics who had heard advance copies were calling it haunting, powerful, and essential listening. But right now, standing backstage, about to walk out in front of an audience for the first time in 5 years, Naomi felt the familiar flutter of nerves. Her right hand was trembling slightly. The nerve damage hadn't magically healed, probably never would, but she had learned to work with it to make it part of her sound rather than a limitation. She thought of David, as she always did before performances. Thought of his belief in her, his love, his final words. "Your music is your soul." She had found her soul again, or maybe she had created a new one. Either way, she was ready. The club manager gave her the signal. "You're on Ms. Fletcher." Naomi walked out onto the stage. The applause was immediate and warm. She saw familiar faces in the crowd. Jackson was there, of course. Several musicians she had known in her previous life. And in the back, surprisingly, she saw some of the guests from the Ashford Gala, people who had witnessed her transformation and wanted to see what came next. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, placed her hands on the keys, and she began to play. Not Gershwin this time. Something else. Something softer, more intimate. A jazz standard that David had loved. Autumn Leaves. She played it slowly, tenderly, letting each note breathe. Playing not to impress, but to express. Playing the truth of her experience. And as she played, she realized something profound. She was home, not in a place, but in herself, in the music, in the act of creation and expression. She had been broken, yes, had lost everything, yes, had spent 5 years in a hell of grief and struggle and survival. But she had also found something that people who have never been broken can never fully understand. She had found the strength that comes from rebuilding, the wisdom that comes from loss, the freedom that comes from having nothing left to lose. And that made all the difference. As for Vivian Ashford, Naomi had heard she was planning another gala. Heard she was still moving through society circles, still pretending to understand art and culture. But Naomi didn't think about her much anymore, because Vivian had been right about one thing all those months ago. Life really does take you to unexpected places. Sometimes those places are darker than you ever imagined. And sometimes, if you're brave enough, if you're strong enough, if you refuse to let the darkness define you, those unexpected places lead you somewhere beautiful, somewhere you never could have found without the journey, somewhere like home. So how did a woman serving drinks at a billionaire's gala end up bringing an entire room of elites to tears with a single piano performance? The answer is simple and complicated at once. She stopped trying to be who she was before. She embraced who she had become. She took all the pain and loss and trauma that could have destroyed her, and she transformed it into something beautiful. She played the truth, her truth, with all its imperfections and scars and hard-won wisdom. And truth, it turns out, is the most powerful music of all. Because we all carry our own losses, our own traumas, our own moments when life knocked us down and we had to decide whether to stay down or get back up. Naomi Fletcher's story reminds us that getting back up doesn't mean pretending the fall never happened. It means incorporating the fall into who you become. It means letting your scars become part of your strength. They tried to humiliate her. They tried to prove she was nothing. They tried to use her pain as entertainment, Instead, they gave her wings, and she flew.